When the war started to escalate, President Doe saw the need to seek help to stop the war. He wrote to the Organization for African Unity, to the head of that organization at that time, Dr. Salim of Tanzania, who was the Secretary General. The answer from the OAU was that it was Liberia's internal affair, and therefore the OAU could not and was not going to do anything about it. The President of Liberia wrote to the United Nations. The reply from the United Nations was that it was the internal affairs of the Republic of Liberia and they were not going to do anything about it. Those letters can be found in the archive of the Executive Mansion. Contact Mr. Valentine, who controlled the archive until a few months ago when he was retired. Mr. Valentine is alive. He's in Monrovia, Liberia, and he will be happy to show you those letters. When those efforts failed, President Doe decided to fall back on our traditional friends, the Americans. You may recall that President Doe had been pro-Western for a long time. In fact, when he came to power in 1980, there was a situation at the Liberian embassy in Washington, D.C. that necessitated investigation. I accompanied the Deputy Minister of Information, General Gray Allison, to the United States to investigate. During our tour of the United States in September 1980, the Congress were holding a joint hearing on Liberia. Doe had just come to power in April. The American system did not know very much about him, and they wanted to know who he was. And so they were having a hearing where opposition leaders and other people were there presenting papers, and Deputy Minister Gray Allison was invited, and I accompanied him to Congress in September 1980. At that time, when they had all of the discussions in open session, and the ambassador to the United States at that time was requesting help for the government of Liberia, the government of head of state Doe. The Congress wanted to know whether they could trust Doe because they didn't know him and he had come to power, and the first person to recognize the Liberian government when Doe took power, the first person to recognize his government was Muammar Gaddafi. Gaddafi was the first person to broadcast that he recognized the new regime in Liberia. And so they took note of that and was wondering whether Doe had links with socialist people. Of course, it was known that Doe had attended the Mosiah Garvey High School on Clay Street that was operated by people who were linked to Moja, and the NSA, with which the Americans have a connection, continuously warned the government about some pro-socialist activity at Mosiah Garvey School. I got to know that because I worked with Dr. Huff as his administrative assistant, and the reports from the NSA, the weekly report, passed through me before it got to Minister Huff. And so all of these names that appeared, not all, but most of the names that appeared on the TRSC, some of the prominent names were linked to Marcus Garvey School. I'm sure the NSA might be able to help you with that situation, because they should have a good filing system. All they have to do is to go back to 1977, 78, and they will find that out. I need to tell you that because of that Marcus Garvey School, the president of Liberia, William R. Talbot Jr., expressed concern about the Marcus Garvey School and said that Dr. Huff should do something about it. The living witnesses to prove this point are Dr. Walter Richards, he a pastor of a Baptist church, the Salem Baptist Church. He's a resident of Clay Ashland. Mrs. Christine Talbot Norma, Dr. Richards was deputy minister. Mrs. Christine Talbot Norma was deputy minister at that time. Mr. Aloysius, Dr. Aloysius Farah was also at the ministry, and I was there. And we had a meeting. Dr. Huff called a strategy meeting to decide what to do with the Marcus Garvey High School. Some people said it should be closed down. Other people argued that we did not have the legal right to close it down without justification. And so the end of the meeting, I took minutes of that meeting, and all of my documents and my minutes and everything I have copied somewhere. And the result of that meeting was that the Ministry of Education, the senior staff, decided to declare all night schools in the Monrovia area as substandard. Now, I'm telling you the strategy that was used to close down the Marcus Garvey School. All night schools in Monrovia were declared substandard, and they were asked to reapply for recertification. And in that process, Marcus Garvey did not qualify. And that how Marcus Garvey died before the coup. I'll carry you through that to let you know that the Americans are not dumb people. They track people down from your cradle to the grave. And so they knew that Doe had some connection with Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey had some connection with Mosiah. Mosiah had some connection with the liberation movements in Africa, and were linked to a pro-socialist stance at one point and all that kind of thing. So they asked whether Doe had any socialist link before they could think about helping him or not. September 1980. The part of the meeting that we could hear said that they have checked Doe out. He had no socialist link. He was just a young man who was primed for grooming, and they should not let him be, because Gaddafi was trying to reach out to him, and every effort should be made to support him so that he won't go that way. And so they asked us to leave the hall while they went into a secret session with the Central Intelligence Agency at Congress. The CIA people came into the room, and we had to leave for the secret session. They had that secret session, and when we came back into the room, it was announced that Doe was someone they could do business with. And so that day, General Allison had the occasion to telephone to Monrovia to inform Doe that he was somebody that the Americans could work with. This was September 1980.